the same stories that we read earlier. Let me just go very quickly to the inside pages. A story there that should be of interest on page 12. Let's go to page 12. Page 12. Chief Justice warns judges on conflicting judgments. Now, the new Chief Justice, of course, has warned justices of the Court of Appeal against conflicting judgments and political association. That's coming from the Chief Justice. Now, also on page 17 of Daily Trust, this is politics now. Autumn joins APC. Of course, Autumn was, until a couple of months ago, a Minister of State for Department meeting, that's Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. He contested the PDP primaries, lost that, and a report there says that he has joined APC. Autumn joins APC. That's from page 17 of Daily Trust. Newswatch Times will be the next paper for us to take. Newswatch Times, again, a copy on business, just above the name flag of Newswatch Times. Nigeria needs $113 billion to develop key sectors. That's according to the BPE. And also similar stories that we read earlier about the reinstatement, court reinstatement of Jokolo, twin bomb explosions in Jos, and Finland deports 100 Nigerians and 27 also from Sudan over Ebola. Now, it's Jonathan versus Buhari again. That's the lead story of Newswatch Times. And Atiku concedes defeat, congratulates APC candidate. PDP welcomes him. Details to be found on page 4. Now, the front page also tells us in a rider how Jonathan retained Sambo as running mate. Now, one strip promotional copy on the front page of Newswatch Times says, soldiers overrun Boko Haram camps in Adamawa, capture APC other weapons. Now, APC stands for Armored Personnel Carrier. That's for this particular story. Soldiers overrun Boko Haram camps in Adamawa, capture APC and other weapons on page 2. That clarification was very necessary. Important, yes. Now, also, we take a look at the front page of Blueprint. Blueprint has a different spin to the deportation of Nigerians. Just below the name flag, over 100 Nigerians deported aboard a cargo plane. Over 100 Nigerians deported aboard cargo plane. Now, 2015, that's the kicker. Buhari to battle Jonathan, and there's a rider. He is welcome, says the PDP. Now, we'll take a look lastly now at Daily Sun. Daily Sun has, as its lead story again, APC ticket, why Buhari got it. Details to be found on page 6. And Abia elite endorse Kalu for Senate. Details to be found on page 7. Now, there are two captions to the two photographs there. Two captions to the two photographs on the front page. I'll serve with humility and moderation. That's the president, page 3. And I'll govern Nigeria honestly. Buhari, details to be found on page 6. Twin bomb blasts rock Jos, another averted in Kano. And PPA candidate serves Governor Orji quit notice. Start packing as will reclaim state, he says. Now, the other story right there has to do with the recipient of the Emir of Gwandu. Bayo?
Thank you, Kingsley. Yes, now I recall in 2006 the entry of Rochas Anayo Okorocha into Eagle Square with that imposing caravan. You remember?
Precisely,
yes,
precisely. That's correct.
But now he now has to be a gubernatorial candidate in the 2015 election. The National Health Bill has been signed into law, and with that law, it becomes a crime now to reject accident victims at hospitals, whether public or private. And the law also has made it mandatory for the federal, state and local government to make special provision for health purposes in the country. The interesting development in that law is that children below the age of 5, pregnant women, the elderly and the disabled are to benefit from free health care in our nation. Polio too is on the verge of being eradicated in Nigeria. You recall that there were concerns expressed in 2 states of the Federation. At a workshop for journalists for the eradication of polio in Sokoto, indication was given that if the current trend that is to run in this December, the polio campaign is carried out successfully, we may succeed in kicking polio out of Nigeria. Still talking about health, You recall that earlier on you drew attention to the issue of Ebola being identified by the newspaper.
By Time Magazine.
Time Magazine for this year. Well, currently, the Ebola that is ravaging West Africa is the 23rd outbreak of that disease. And the current one is perhaps the strongest of all the strains. While all the other previous ones do not last beyond a week or maximum 14 days, the current one takes about 21 days incubationary period. And that is why perhaps it has taken that prominence. Nigerians, 100 of them, have been deported from Scandinavia, particularly from Finland. Yes. And there were some also deported from Sudan about Ebola. And that, I think, must be a matter of concern for the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs, because Nigeria does not have a case of Ebola any longer. Sure. Nigeria has been certified to be Ebola-free. But the concern that one must have is about our compatriots that were deported from Finland. These were Nigerians who were there in asylum, seeking asylum. And one would wonder that maybe they are running away from persecution. And they said they were in camps waiting for permits to get employment. And somehow they claim that they are being discriminated against. There are others from Eastern European countries who were there in the same thing. They wonder why they were deported. I think no matter where you want to be, there's no place like home. And the challenges at home may be very, very high, but they are not insurmountable. But there's no place certainly than like home. Thanks.
Okay, Bayo, just before we say thank you on today's edition, let me just make a point. The matter is sub judice, and that has to do with the case involving General Obasanjo's autobiography, which my watch. There's been a court injunction, and of course it's been cited for contempt and given 21 days to indicate why he should not be punished. He's gone on appeal, so the matter is sub judice. But there's one key issue that has been raised in all of this, and that has to do with publication. When is a book deemed to have been published? I think that's one of the issues that the courts will have to look into in the course of this matter. We can't comment on that now, but just to highlight it in the course of our review this morning. Bayo Atoyebe, thank you for being with us, and I'd like to wish you a good weekend.
Thank you very much.
Okay, this is Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're taking a break now. When we return, we'll go ahead with our principal topic for conversation today, which is still dealing with matters arising from the party primaries.
Do you know that you are exposed to up to 100 illness-causing germs every day?
I encourage my kids to learn new things, and if they get hurt, I rely on my Dettol to fight germs. It's like my own first aid kit.
My family needs protection from germs. My Dettol disinfects surfaces and clothes, keeping them clean and safe from germs.
I bet you can touch your nose with your thumb.
Nose?
It's the same with your toilet. There are many places in your toilet that detergents cannot clean. That is why the new Harpic 5 times Complete gives you 5 times better cleaning than detergent from the rim all the way to the U-bend, making your toilet completely clean. With Harpic 5 times Complete, you will definitely reach all the hard-to-clean places in your toilet.
Harpic Power Plus. Buy now for only 350 Naira.
Does your husband's shirt need some whitening? Just use a little Jik and some water. With Jik Pot Puree and Lemon, your cleaning troubles are over. Is there a dirty floor stain that's frightening? Or a muddy mess left by your daughter? Is your stove no longer so shiny? Or your bra as dirty as ever?
Just Jikis!
Pot Puree and Lemon.
Just Jikis!
It makes cleaning a joy.
Just Jikis!
Hey, you better go get
Just Jikis!
Now available in lemon and pot puree fragrances, the newest and freshest way to Jik it.
All right, now across the country in the last couple of weeks, we've seen a series of party primaries by the various political parties. And the purpose, of course, has been to elect their candidates who would contest the elections in February next year. Now, with the results of the primaries now in the open, how did the political parties fare, particularly with regard to the two leading parties, the governing PDP and the opposition APC? Did we see true democratic ideas in the conduct of their primaries? In other words, did the primaries indicate internal democracy in the parties? Timothy Yusuf leads us from here in this background.
The People's Democratic Party, PDP, during its national convention held in Abuja, in line with party guidelines, ratified the consensus candidature of President Goodluck Jonathan as its standard bearer. On the other hand, the All Progressives Congress, APC, at its own national convention held in Lagos, declared General Muhammadu Buhari as its standard bearer, having polled the highest number of votes among the 5 aspirants. Political players and watchers say internal democracy reigned supreme during the exercises, thereby restoring hope in the nation's democratic journey.
The peaceful atmosphere, the serenity surrounding the conduct of the presidential primaries of the two political parties, the People's Democratic Party and the All Progressive Congress, shows that Nigeria's democracy is really growing. People are beginning to believe more and more in the power of the ballot box as the appropriate determinant of choice of the people.
Ahead of the 2015 general elections, they expressed the hope that the peaceful conduct of primaries have set the tone for a peaceful exercise.
We expect a level playing field to be provided for by INEC. We expect also that the candidates will be able to go about campaigning freely and fairly and canvassing for votes to be able to impress upon the electorates what they actually want to do if voted into office.
Above all, we thank Nigerians that all this was done very peacefully, and we hope this is a sure sign that the general elections themselves will be peaceful, there will be no bitterness, and come next year we will be able to elect a credible leader to lead us.
Quite a number of other political parties have also come up with their standard bearers. With primary elections now over, the task ahead now is ensuring a credible 2015 general elections. As Nigerians look ahead, the sustenance of the nation's democracy is dependent on the credibility of the 2015 poll.
All right, thank you there, Timothy, for that background. We have joining us to begin the conversation this morning, Barrister Oluwole Osaze-Uzie is a Director, Voter Education and other portfolios at the Independent National Electoral Commission. Barrister Uzie, we'd like to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me again.
Okay, let's begin this way. What has been INEC's take on the party primaries so far, capped, of course, yesterday by the presidential primaries of the two political parties?
Well, I believe there are several presidential primaries, not just two. So let us not make a mistake about that. There are so many parties who are conducting their congresses and conventions, actually. The monitoring teams did go out to monitor all the congresses and conventions, and we're expecting them back at headquarters, and they'll write their reports. From what we have monitored through the newspapers and media, I think things have been fair, generally speaking. Of course, there have been reports of parallel congresses. There have been reports of one or two incidents that were a little bit unsavory, if I may use that word. But by and large, I think it's been fair going.
That's quite interesting, but in the end you also mentioned the issue of parallel primaries, and it's a matter that we have had cause to discuss on this program. In Enugu, for instance, in the primaries for the PDP, I think about 3 or 4 parallel primaries. in Anambra, the same thing, and a few other incidents also occurred elsewhere. Now, which raises the issue as to how INEC, these are not matters for INEC to deal with in the first instance, I believe. Now, what will be INEC's attitude, bound by the law, with regard to the reception of the authentic candidates list for an election?
Well, I think embedded in your question is the answer to that question. Actually, we are bound by the law. We follow the law. The reports of parallel primaries are things we hear of in the media. INEC has the responsibility to monitor the activities of the political parties, of course, including the process by which candidates emerge. And in all of these, there is one lawful, legitimate, recognized primary. If the constituted authority informs us, as they are bound to by law to inform us of they are wanting to conduct a congress, then giving us the required notice, we will go there and monitor the activity. But if other factions or if other people who are not recognized as the constituted authorities of the parties, who don't have the legal or responsibility or the party responsibility to conduct those primaries, then of course we will not recognize them. It's a question of parallel congresses, quite honestly speaking. It's one recognized Congress. All the others are shenanigans being carried out by whoever, whether they're officials or they're just party members or not party members, I don't know.
Well, I mean, let's ask this question. What criteria would be used in determining which is the authentic Congress or primary?
The legal criteria. Each party has a constitution. Each party has a hierarchy. Now, there's a mode of communication between the parties and the commission. If the party informs us they're going to conduct a primary or convention, then we'll take notice, we'll send an observer monitoring team. And that is the one we'll go to. If an unknown entity in terms of the party constitution, in terms of the Electoral Act, informs us, of course we're not bound to and will not go to such an activity. Because there's only one party. And that party, as long as they give that required notice and is convened by the constituted authority, then we'll be there.
Well, INEC has been reported in some quarters as saying that once a candidate's name is submitted, it might not entertain substitution of that candidate by the party on the eve of the elections. Is this the case, and why should that be so?
Well, as I said earlier, everything we do is guided by the law. In this particular case, the Electoral Act. Now, there are only two conditions for substitution. Unlike previous electoral acts, under the 2010 Act, it's only when the candidate dies or he voluntarily withdraws within the stipulated time. And the last day for withdrawal is 45 days to the election. So unless and until the candidate withdraws voluntarily, and we're satisfied that it's a voluntary withdrawal, then there can be no substitution. So it's not INEC saying so, it's the Electoral Act, the law saying so. And we just obey what the law says.
In other words, any candidate who has to withdraw, you said, voluntarily must do so 45 days before the specific election or before the general elections take off. Which of them? Before
any election that is slated. Okay. In this particular case, we're talking of the 2015 general election. So 45 days to that time, any candidate who wishes to withdraw has to voluntarily do so. If he doesn't do so, he becomes a statutory candidate. The party has no discretion in the matter. Absolutely none.
In its supervisory role, as it were, over the political parties, is INEC concerned, for instance, about certain provisions in the various party constitutions with regard to the framework for the conduct of their primaries?
We should be concerned, but before any party is registered, they must register their constitution and manifestos with the INEC, with the commission. And the constitution of the country has laid down provisions which must be contained in your constitution of the party. One of which is that candidates must emerge through a democratic process. Candidates for elections and candidates for to occupy positions in the party must be through a democratic process. And that stands to reason. Political parties should be the drivers of democracy. If you do not have democracy in the parties, then what hope, what chance do you have to have democracy in a larger society? So I think that is informed by it. And don't forget, independent candidates are still not allowed. So it's only when you belong to a party and you're sponsored by that party that stands you qualified to contest an election, amongst other provisions.
Well, let's again deal with this aspect. INEC supervises observes and supervises
monitors
the party primaries or the congresses.
Yes.
And in the cases where there have been parallel primaries, what was the basis of INEC determining which of them to go to? Because some of the aspirants have alleged that the otherwise authentic list of delegates in some of these instances was doctored, and therefore they decided to conduct their own on the basis of what they thought was the authentic list. So how does INEC, or how did INEC choose which of the primaries now, which of the multiple primaries, to regard as the authentic one?
Well, we don't maybe as a question of fact, they might have been parallel primaries, but as a question of law and as a question of operations of the commission, there is only one primary. That is the one called by the constituted authority of the party. The organ that is entitled to call that primary, that is the one, especially if they give us required notice, that is the one the commission will go to. And there are checklists and guidelines which guide parties in the conduct of their primaries and also guide the commission in its monitoring activities regarding those primaries. If there's a question of doctoring of lists, that is why INEC is there. You lay your complaint, and if there's a genuine case, we'll point it out to the party that, look, this is a complaint we have received and we agree with it, even without a complaint. Often when parties do things that are not in accord with their constitution or with the Electoral Act or the constitution of Nigeria, we point it out to them. That is the essence of our monitoring those activities. And after the monitoring activities, we have to submit a report. And of course, if there's only one recognized primary. If any candidate or, aspirant in that primary is dissatisfied with what has got on in that place, usually there's a mechanism for appeals within the parties. And where you're not satisfied, of course, you can go to court. And it is the report of INEC generally that you rely on as to state the exact facts of occurrences at that particular primary. So the solution is not for you to take the laws into your hand and then go and conduct your own primaries. It will not be recognized. That is foolhardy and wrong in law.
Well, let's look at this again. At what point in time should an aspirant take the grievance procedure you have just outlined? Namely, if an aspirant is dissatisfied with the delegates list, and the primary is supposed to be conducted, say, in 24 hours, when the aspirant lodged a complaint with you, is the aspirant not likely to be faced with a fait accompli? Namely, that in 24 hours or in 12 hours or less, we'll conduct our primaries, and thereafter we go to court. And of course, going to court is not cheap, as you very well know. At what time should the aspirant take advantage of the grievance procedure of lodging a complaint with INEC to say the list from our party purported to be used for this primary is rigged?
Well, at the earliest opportunity, of course. As part of the guidelines for the monitoring of parties, we have to have the delegates lists, and we have to have the guidelines of the political parties, how they derive their delegates. It's much easier when you are higher up in the ladder, because very often, for example, you elect delegates from the ward to the local government level, local government congress, to the state level and things like that. And each of these stages is monitored by the commission if they choose to do indirect primaries. But if they choose to do direct primaries, there's a register of votes of members of the party. Yes. And if every member that is registered, whose name is on the book, is entitled to be there, then that is the delegates list you'll use. But they're required to give our monitors that delegates list before the commencement of the Congress or convention. So if you are dissatisfied with that list, and every aspirant is entitled to that list according to the party, most of the party constitutions, if you are dissatisfied, then you lodge your complaint, both first with the party and then with the commission, if you're not satisfied with the dispute resolution that the party has attempted to resolve.
Okay, virtually as it were now, INEC is set for the elections because the parties also have their candidates. I'm sure in the next couple of days or weeks you should be getting the names of the various candidates now. And in terms of readiness, because we hear there are still complaints about funding, we hear there are complaints or concerns about insecurity as well. So where does INEC?
Well, the preparations are afoot. In many instances, we are ready, conducted today. But at the same time, there are other things like sensitive materials that still have to come and everything else. So all preparations are ongoing. Some we're ready. We're still distributing the permanent voters. In that regards, regardless of the security situation, regardless of what else is going on outside, we are making preparations and still targeting scheduled dates of February 14th and 28th.
What will be the deadline for registered voters to get their cards? The permanent voter deadline, absolute deadline.
Well, it's a policy issue, and for now we say keep going there because we have just over 60% average collection for all the states we have done the distribution of cards. That is not a good enough percentage. I think people should still go out and collect their cards from the INEC local government offices of the commission. We'll still go on till January. Theoretically, we can go on till even election day, but that's not exactly the most desirable of situations considering our climes. So really, a cutoff date will be announced in good time, but probably the end of January 2015.
Okay, let's take a look at one aspect of the conduct of the congresses and conventions, particularly the man-hours expended by the parties to conduct their conventions. I mean, spend virtually 36 hours dealing with fewer than 8,000 or 10,000 delegates. Is INEC likely to make a recommendation to the parties on this aspect?
Well, we have not. The commission is yet to meet to consider all the reports of the convention, so I would not want to preempt what they will do. But as much as possible, although you regulate parties, you monitor the activities of parties, you leave them to do things the way they want to. I would rather, on a personal level, that you spend 24 to 36 hours getting it right than spending 2 hours and leaving people totally dissatisfied or disgruntled after the process. So I think I prefer that things spend your time and do it well, but at the same time there should be a reasonable window for that. 36 hours is a bit on the long side.
You know, the reason I asked the question is that, yes, we're all familiar with the background to these lengthy processes that we're going through now. The parties want to be seen to be transparent,
absolutely,
and they want everybody, all stakeholders, to see and believe, in fact, that the primaries have been conducted in a fair and free manner. That's why they go through the entire hog. What I actually was taking a look at, and that's the question I'm going to ask now. Yes. We've been toying with the idea of electronic voting. And as you can see, some of the lengthy processes don't necessarily have to do with accreditation. Now, if you have a sizable number of delegates, fewer than 10,000, if each of them were to go there and punch a button, and then you have a display board that shows the scores, you won't go through all of this issue again of, you know, paperwork, you know, sorting out the candidates. You know, this one is this one. You sort, and then you tally, you count, and you declare. That's the point I was actually getting at. Are we likely to get there? Are the parties going to take a cue from electronic voting that INEC has been toying with for a while?
No, it's not correct to say INEC has been toying with electronic voting, actually, because it's against the law.
Yes.
The Electoral Act specifically bans electronic voting for the time being, as using the words of the law. So we haven't toyed with that. What we have toyed with is the deployment of technology in other aspects like accreditation, where we'll use the card readers, which will hasten the process. Other aspects permissible by law, not prohibited by law. We cannot tell the parties how to conduct their primaries as long as they stay within the four walls of the law, and that it's conducted in a democratic manner and usually secret ballot. So it will be up to them to do things that will hasten and will ease their process in as much as it conforms with the provisions of the law. Use of electronic voting is not banned for primaries by the parties. If they choose to do that, I'm sure that'll be a good idea and a welcome thing for most of the parties that can afford to do that. Yes.
Okay, and just one last question now. Voter education remains, you know, a pertinent issue at all times, you know, including, of course, going to pick your permanent voter's card.
Absolutely.
What is INEC doing to scale up its voter education ahead of the elections?
Well, there are different strategies employed for that. Throughout this week, the Commission, for example, has met with several stakeholders. On Monday, it was the traditional rulers. On Tuesday, it was religious leaders from all over the country. Right. On Wednesday, the chairman met with the media in Lagos. And yesterday and today, we're meeting with people living with disabilities. So regularly we're meeting with stakeholders and passing the message on to people. Of course, other strategies involve going to the print and electronic media to disseminate this message, social media as well to disseminate it. Look, cars are still lying down there. We've concentrated too much on people not finding their names on the register. Those whose names on the register, those whose cars are there are still lying fallow. So many, 30-something% of Nigerians still have their cars in our INEC offices. So it behoves them to ensure, because if you don't have this card, you're not likely to vote. So we're scaling up, and as it gets nearer to the deadline, we'll continue to scale up publicity in that regard. And on platforms such as this, we take the opportunity to inform Nigerians. I know millions of people watch you every day, so each time we come, we say the same thing, and we'll keep repeating them.
All right. On that note, I would like to thank Mr. Oluwole Osaze-Ozi for joining us this morning on Good Morning Nigeria to discuss matters arising from the primaries of the various political parties.
Thank you.
Right now, we are taking a break on Good Morning Nigeria. When we return, we'll take our next guest on the subject matter for conversation this morning.
My mom told me great acting needed good health. I've played so many roles in life, but my proudest role is mother to my children and my community projects. I've achieved all this thanks to good health every day with Dettol. And to be 100% sure that my children achieve success in their life, I trust Dettol, so they don't miss a single day of good health.
Dettol, proudly part of Nigerian health for 50 years.
I need a great deal, the best price I can get. That's why I shop on Jumia. Quality you can trust, you can count on us. It's your delivery. With a shopping easier. It's your delivery. When you shop on Jumia, when the rain or shine,
the Infinix Zero, now available at 23,900 Naira at jumia.com.ng. Jumia, the online shop you can trust.
The Dettol and Ministry of Health team is visiting schools to teach children how to protect themselves from diseases.
Do you know what germs are? They are tiny, harmful, living things that you pick up from dirty surfaces. These germs can make you ill and prevent you from doing all the things you like to do with friends. That's why you need to fight them by washing your hands regularly with Dettol soap.
Mom, today we learned how to fight germs with Dettol soap.
Okay, we are watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the NTA. We have our next guest now is Barrister Mark Jacob, right here with us in the studios to discuss matters arising from the party primaries and conventions. Barrister Jacob, welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you've monitored, obviously, and observed the party primaries. What's your take on it? Let's try to delimit it. A number of persons have spoken about the relative peace that attended the primaries, and of course praise has also gone to the parties for the gradual, the incremental benefits we are seeing with regard to internal democracies, but there are still problems.
Yes.
What did you find?
First of all, I think we should also acknowledge the fact that our institutions have been strengthened. I think INEC, from Section 86 of the Electoral Act 2010 as amended, is exercising its powers appropriately now, because all these issues of nominations are supposed to be guided and monitored by INEC. And I've seen an attempt by the political parties to be transparent, to at least indicate that they are doing the right thing and that they are following the rule of law. So, first of all, we must be happy, and we must be happy that these institutions have been strengthened and we're getting somewhere. Yes, rightly, the parties have also played their part very well. I monitored the PDP convention and the APC convention. We see a semblance of rational work going on, attempts at doing the right thing. I think this is commendable.
Okay, despite all of that, as I said, there are problems that persist.
Yes.
In some instances, we've heard of parallel primaries. We don't know how many parallel lines there are in some of these cases. We just spoke earlier with the director of INEC, and the insistence on saying, look, we will only deal with that recognized by the party. How can we obviate, as it were, the persistent challenge of parallel primaries arising from, obviously, disputes over the delegates list?
Certainly there are still problems. We are not yet there. The process of producing delegates for these elections, certainly there are flaws. The parties have their own set guidelines on how delegates should be produced. It is to be through congresses at the ward levels, but there are allegations which are not really unfounded, that some of these names of delegates were just composed, some in government houses. Governors sat down and composed the names of delegates. And the way the law is, certainly like INEC said, there is nothing anybody can do for now outside the party structure. The party has a structure, it has its hierarchy. The person who is supposed to forward the names of the authentic list is the party. So if the party is answerable to the governors or to a governor in a particular state, it is what the governor produces using the party machinery that will be authentic, even if apparently there are flaws in the process. So we are faced with a very serious situation where a draconian situation can arise without a solution. And these are the reasons why you have parallel activities, complaints here and there. But like I said, it's the situation, it's the law as it is. There is really very little anybody can do besides jumping ship and going to another political party.
Well, I mean, before the jump ship, what is the grievance procedure? Does an aspirant, for instance, have the opportunity of exhausting the grievance procedure before deciding to jump ship?
Yes, there is certainly a set-down procedure. Like in the PDP, you have appeals panel that comes after the congresses. You appeal to that committee. If your appeal succeeds, you certainly get redress. But your guess is as good as mine. If the electoral committee that was sent to the state decided in the first instance to agree or to cooperate with the governor of a state to compile the list and authenticated that list and approved that that list was authentic, you will be appealing against a big moving train. And it's the same committee, or the committee will still come and hand itself over to the sitting governor who will determine what happens. But I must say that there are some positive developments in this entire process, which we must acknowledge. That for the first time, we have a situation like we used to have some NTA soap opera, that the rich also cry. For the first time, we also have big men crying that they have been shortchanged. It's a beautiful thing. It used to be the small rats like us that will always run to complain. Yes. Today we have either former governors, we have people who have been in the Senate for years and wanted to go back. They have turned the place into a permanent emirship where they stay till they die. For the first time, they have also been pushed out. So whatever the grievances are, there are positive signs that you don't go and sit down and insist that you will remain there whether the people want it or not. Well, it's a positive thing. I don't know how it happened, but for me, it's good.
Okay, now let's take a look at the biggest office in the land, namely the presidency.
Yes.
APC has picked General Muhammadu Buhari, and this, of course, has been by a very wide margin.
Yes.
The PDP, of course, has also retained incumbent President Goodluck Jonathan, who's taken his vice president as running mate. This is again squaring up as it was in 2011. Of course, General Buhari has been in the race for a number of times. Yeah. What kind of race does this portend for us?
I'm not sure it's going to be different from the 2011 experience. The campaigns, unless some people change their style, what we saw in 2011 was an over-concentration in blocks, where General Buhari concentrated in some parts of the country and ignored other parts, and that affected his election. The candidate of the PDP concentrated in some other blocks. So we hope that there will be a change, first of all, in the campaign strategy. You don't limit yourself to certain cleavages and expect a national acceptability. We also expect that campaigns will be based on issues. Enough of the mudslinging and the insults and the bad language. I think Nigeria should graduate. And so we are happy. For me, I'm happy that the same candidates that we had in 2011 are being thrown up again by the political parties. Let us see something. Let's get deeper discussion. Let the issues that you concentrate on, if you are given an election or if you are given the vote, let them be the issues for discussion. And I'm looking forward to this election with a lot of positivity. I hope that Nigeria will come out the better for it. Democracy has been sustained for years now. We cannot be moving backwards. We must move forward. And it shows that probably the two candidates have been able to retain the confidence of the members of their party. And this is good for the country.
We also we saw ahead of the convention of the APC, yes, a declaration by the aspirants that they would not decamp if they lost. Now, of course, we know who the winner of the ticket is in the APC. Yeah. What does this portend? Is it going to be a test of the sincerity of those who subscribed to the declaration of not decamping?
No, where will they decamp to? Like Atiku Abubakar, he has over-decamped. If he attempts to come back to PDP, he will be the most humorous politician in the country. So I'm sure there's nowhere to go to, and that's why they will remain there. But truly, it's also good. I was happy when I saw them congratulate Muhammad Buhari after the election. It's possible. Let's at least begin to accept results of elections. And our politicians must grow to that extent of saying, look, I have lost and I have lost. I'll wait for another time. Not to jump ship every time you lost election. That is not maturity. And I hope that that is a sign for those behind, particularly supporters, to copy. Because sometimes the political head is instigated by followers to do certain things. They have said they will not decamp. That is good news. Even though, like I said, they don't have anywhere to decamp to. They will not certainly be welcome in PDP.
Yeah, but that's a matter that we'll leave, to deal with yes. Going forward. There's a question I raised with the INEC director, which I find, it's a matter that we probably will need to deal with. The cost of conducting, say, a convention, yes. The cost of conducting, say, a primary. Yes, I mean, I'm sure, probably had the benefit of listening to our conversation on this. Everybody wants the process to be seen and to be seen to be and to actually be transparent and free and fair to everybody. But when you spend 24, 36 hours straight on to the wee hours of the morning, accrediting and voting and sorting and counting, couldn't the parties now, as part of going forward, begin to contemplate the introduction of technology into the voting process? You accredit your delegates, you know them, they are fewer than 8 or 10,000, you punch and then the scores come up right there on the screen.
Absolutely. That would be great. But the Electoral Act even makes it easier. The Electoral Act in Section 86 also recommends indirect system of primaries. The process, people don't have to all converge in Abuja or Lagos. You can do these primaries in your states. And then the results are collated. But we have all adopted this singular system of bringing delegates to one place. It is draconian. It gives room for manipulation, which the politicians actually prefer, so that they have all the delegates in one place and can railroad them into taking one decision or the other at a particular time. It is certainly something that crept into the system from the Obasanjo era, where every delegate or every governor had to show that he was loyal by coming to Abuja with all his delegates and ensuring that what Mr. President has said is what he will do, and to show that he is loyal. So we have adopted it, not necessarily because it is the correct thing or it is the only option, but because we have grown to attempt to show that we are loyal and that we are going to be obedient. This can change, and it is recommended really that we should look at various options. Delegates leave their states and come to Abuja, in the case of the PDP, for 3 days. And you can imagine, well, it's good business for hoteliers, for other businesses, but it's a very big economic waste.
I hope we all don't get surprised next year. I mean, I'm saying this in a positive and pleasant sense. The concentration has been on the two parties, the governing PDP and the opposition APC. And oftentimes we tend to consigned into a less prominent position the other political parties, the smaller political parties, and of course the fringe political parties. What influence, if any, do you see the smaller parties playing apart from the big three that I've just mentioned, like big two that I've mentioned?
They are going to play a very prominent role because, again, for those who are decamping in anger because of the outcome of the primaries, they have a fallback position. Yeah, you must be aware of the Bonyi, where the entire collection of people that were hitherto in PDP have moved into Labour Party.
Labour Party, that's correct.
They have taken the governorship ticket and other tickets available. So Labour Party, APGA, and other parties are going to play a very prominent role in this 2015 election and subsequent ones, because they provide a ready fallback position for those who feel humiliated or shortchanged in the bigger political parties.
Again, what role? What role? I was looking at their role, for instance, in swinging the outcome of the presidential election, or in picking up a number of seats in the legislature, state and national, as well as governorship. Or how, with all of this, how might all of this impact on the outcome of the presidential election?
Well, you and I know that Labour Party and APGA from 2011, they indicated they were working in tandem with the PDP, and that that is as regards the presidential ticket. They didn't field any presidential candidates, and I'm not sure there is any change in position for Labour and APGA. So that may not affect the presidential election. But in the National Assembly, most of the states are going to be affected by the choices. If there are conflicts in the PDP or APC in most of the states, APGA, Labour Party particularly, are going to take a big swing at the final polls, because some very popular candidates who are supposedly shortchanged in the primaries in the bigger parties will go and find support there. And truly, some of these candidates have acceptability in the grassroots, and they may win the election. And I see them winning some major upsets in the states.
Okay, what kind of issues would you like the candidates to focus on in the 2015 election, so that it's really an issue-based election rather than one of mudslinging?
Well, the economy is one very important issue. Any president in this of Nigeria must tell us what he's going to do with the economy. And that, to me, is very fundamental. Secondly, the issue of security. People have said that if they are elected president, they will stop insurgency. Let us see some proof, because sincerely, this is an issue that is eating deep into anything. You can do all the development. You can bring all the social activities and projects, but if there is no security, everybody is damned. So if somebody can address, and I mean every presidential aspirant must address this issue and give us concrete proof of what he intends to do. We are tired of running around in circles, running away from insurgents. Nigeria needs intervention, and the candidates must give us solid evidence of capacity and willingness to address these issues.
Okay, Barrister Mark Jacob, I would like to thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
All right, this is Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now.
Sometimes life can be very boring. But in the MTN season of surprises, you get a special smartphone plan that gives you a whopping 4.5 gigabytes at only 2,500 naira, so you can browse more, chat more, tweet more, and upload those unforgettable moments of the season. Text 120 to 131 now to activate your smartphone bundle, or dial *123# for more options.
MTN, everywhere you go.
50,000 naira! Free money, free money, free money!
This is no news. They said they're giving away free money. Free money!
Free money?
That's mommy!
Madam, who's giving out free money? It's a Cherry Noodles Naira Hot promo. When you buy a carton of Cherry Noodles, you may see one or even 2 packs with an amount written on the seasoning sachet. Go to the nearest Cherry Noodles retail shop and collect your cash instantly.
Hurry! It's the Cherry Noodles Naira Hot promo. Cherry Noodles, love at first.
My mom told me great acting needed good health. I've played so many roles in life, but my proudest role is mother to my children and my community projects. I've achieved all this thanks to good health every day with Dettol. And to be 100% sure that my children achieve success in their life, I trust Dettol, so they don't miss a single day of good health.
Dettol, proudly part of Nigerian health for 50 years.
Okay, still on matters arising from the conduct of the party primaries. I have joining us now in the studios here, Professor Sam Amdi is a professor of political science at the University of Abuja. Professor Amdi, welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
Now, the congresses and conventions are all over. What, in your opinion, went right and what went wrong?
Well, what I observed is that the major parties, the PDP and APC, had organic arrangement for the conduct of the primaries. I happen to be a national delegate at the PDP, so I watched it from the beginning to the end. And there's evidence that a lot of inputs were placed on the ground that make the organization very smooth, conflict-free, and the delegates were very consistent in waiting from the beginning to the end. And it also demonstrated very clearly that PDP prepared fully for this delegate election. For the APC, I only watched it on TV. And it looks also clear that those who are contesting agree that whoever wins will be given support. And it was a very good extent. It was smooth, and therefore that should be considered a great departure from what has been happening previously. We do hope that what happened at the primary level will be manifested in the national election.
In terms of what now? At the national, the parties
well,
now?
In terms of,
yes.
It was smooth at the primary.
Yes.
Are the elections going to be smooth without conflict? Because that's the most important thing. If the primaries went very smoothly in a very conducive environment, elections should also be smooth and should be operated in a very conducive environment. Would there be hitches? Would there be torturing? Would there be bullets, a season of ballot boxes? Would there be competition, shooting of guns? That is the issue. What we observed in Abuja here was smooth. We do hope that the proper election too should be smooth and be healthy.
Well, yeah, you're talking now about the conventions that picked the presidential candidates of the two leading parties. But of course, in the last couple of weeks, we've had a series of primaries to the various elective positions, House of Assembly, the National Assembly, that's the House of Reps, and the Senate, and of course, governorship. What's been your assessment of this series of elections leading up to the conventions?
Well, at the state levels, there were a lot of hiccups. Some people felt they have been disenfranchised. They have not been given opportunity to get candidates through the process. It's also argued that some governors, some key people in the two major parties had their interests articulated, and some of the delegates had their name changed, and therefore, to some extent, it wasn't healthy. In some states, the election went smoothly, but in some states, in the middle, there was crisis. They had to be aborted. A good number of states could not get their gubernatorial election, senatorial, House of Representatives, even House of Assembly, because of the hiccups. Well, it has to be tied down to the question of interest articulation and interest aggregation. Where the executive had an interest, you even find former governors still had interest. A lot of big wigs in the party at the national level had interest. So it's a question of articulating people's interest, and that is very conflictual. And therefore, a good number of candidates could not get the election organized properly. And this is why some of them have tried to move to other parties. So on a general note, one can say that the primaries were fair, but there are still a lot of hiccups at the state level. And this is why up to the present moment, some states have not had the election fully organized. There are some states...
There are primaries.
Yeah. There are some states that are even moving from a major party to other minor parties because their interests had not been properly articulated. So it is not too healthy, as I have observed.
Well, a sore point from the primaries had to do with the manipulation of alleged manipulation of delegates list. And obviously this speaks to the conflict of interest that you've already identified, that some big wigs in the various parties, had their own interests. Of course, all of this will impact negatively, obviously, on internal party democracy. Now, because a number of guests that we've had while we've been discussing this subject matter over the last couple of weeks have also identified this issue of the manipulation of delegates list. How can the parties learn useful lessons from this untoward practice of manipulating the delegates list, which of course is a micro voters register?
Well, you see, I'm seriously disappointed.
Yes.
If you look at the metamorphosis of electoral practice, it looks that as if Nigerians have not learned their lesson. We have two major forces that are perverting on the political economy of the elections. The issue of centripetal forces and centrifugal forces. As centrifugal forces are those forces that try to determine by hook or crook to ensure that their interests are articulated. The centripetal forces are those forces that try to bring together and bring harmony. But it looks very clear that the leaders have not learned much. Even if they have learned, they fail to transmit what is right into action. One would have expected that the issue of internal democracy should be allowed and should be sustained. But in many good cases, internal democracy in most of the parties have not been properly articulated. The issue of political stakeholders, the issue of top echelon in the party, the issue of top echelon in the government are pursuing their interest to ensure. So what now matters is the interest of individual or corporate groups against the national interest. So that is very, very unhealthy. It also shows that we have not learned much from history. If we cannot learn from history, then we don't know what is going to happen beyond 2014. So if internal democracy has been reduced to a barest minimum, then you also happen what is going to happen to the largest democracy when we come to national election. It means it might be a question of do or die. And once you use those instrumentalities, there's going to be crisis. So one would have expected in this century that we are still exhibiting those voices that happened right from 1960 to date. There may be some marginal changes here and there, but I think by now it should be more fundamental. And so that is the area I'm worried about.
No, well, Prof, I mean, your views are quite different from the views that have been canvassed by a number of other commentators. I mean, they've heard the primaries has been largely violence-free. So it would appear that, you know, the fears of violence against at next year's elections probably are overstated. But again, the parties conducting their own elections, their own primaries, are not the parties that will conduct the general elections. Yes. Yeah, but the question I asked is, look, intra-party itself, how do you discipline the henchmen, or how do the henchmen begin to discipline themselves to ensure that, look, the delegates list is indeed a delegates list and not a doctored one? Yeah. To take this point, let's look at it this way. Can we, I'm just in terms of a discourse, say we leave it to market forces to decide that if a party doesn't behave very well by organizing or by having internal democracy and doctoring its list, the party loses members to a competing party. And if a competing party defeats it and the other party loses power, over time, the party will learn from it. Yeah. Is that one option? In other words, would we prescribe jumping ship, you know, for a party to bleed so that it knows that where it's suffering from its own inadequacies? Or do the parties, or can the parties be encouraged to say, look, present a list that is proper and genuine and conduct your primaries?
You fail to understand that it is human beings who control parties. Parties are mere instruments that are manipulated by the ruling class oligarchy that control and determine who gets what, when, and how. As I mentioned earlier, there are big wigs in party that have their interest to be articulated. And therefore, they make every effort to ensure that their candidates get in. They know the rules of the game. That is why we have the problem of internal democracy. As we mentioned, if there were congresses and the right candidates got their name into the list, and there's no tampering, and you allow each individual to go and articulate interest and vote for who they want, there will be no problem. But I told you that centrifugal forces operate clandestine under subterranean mechanism to ensure that only their interests, some delegates, some lists, are even changed a day to the election. Because, let me give you an example. Some states cannot organize their primaries in their states, and they have to move to Lagos and Abuja. The question is, why? That's why I'm telling you that these subterranean forces is manifesting. And that's why I'm also arguing that even at national level, those forces may manifest, but it may not be as sharp as what it is. So if there's internal democracy in the parties that control the machinery, they will not have that problem. But the vices, individual behavior, individual needs, articulated of interest, articulated of group interest, tend to overshadow what is national and what is normal. The issue in this country is the question of political culture.
Okay, now let's leave the parties to sort themselves out and then go on now to the general election. Yeah. Obviously, since 1998, this is probably the first time, let's say 2003, this is probably the first time we're having an opposition that is as large as the APC. Is the PDP going to get a run for its money?
Well, it depends on the programs which the party pursues. It's true that the APC has become more articulated, but the fact still remains is, what is the program in question? Any party that has to win this election must focus on certain areas, particularly the issue of security, the issue of the economy, the issue of unemployment, the issue of price of oil. Nigeria is a lopsided economy and will depend on the oiling. Therefore, any party that's going to win the election must bank on that. You should also remember that the level of development at the rural areas are not as adequate as one will expect, that whether they will internalize the programs. So beyond the articulation of programs, the party that is going to get it through will have to do a lot of mobilization at the grassroots, probably translating what they intend to do into vernacular and do a lot of campaign. But generally, among the elites, those who can read and write, listen to radio, the issue of economy and the issue of security is quite germane. You know the current price situation in the oil. We also know how our naira has gone down. So people are interested who is going to beef it up. If by January the price goes down and there are no adequate measures to control, to buffer, then there will be a problem. But generally, there are also people who are traditionally opponents. There are people who are traditionally PDP. There are going to be a lot of population that will remain PDP come rain, come thunder. And those who are in opposition there too, they are in that context. But the issue still remains that we must make programs, projects at the barometer upon which you can lay your campaign. If you do it very well and you can articulate it, the road is clear.
In the presidential contest, obviously the PDP is set. President Goodluck Jonathan and his vice president, they are on the same ticket. General Buhari and the APC now have the task of picking a running mate. What do you foresee, and what's likely? What do you foresee?
In terms of what?
In terms of a choice of a running mate, because are we likely to see a 1993 thing, Abiola and Kingibe?
Well, I think the political temperature now has changed. The climate has changed. I suspect very strongly that Buhari may have to pick somebody from the south, somebody that will, Nigeria is a very heterogeneous country. We are not homogeneous. And the level of consciousness is high. So I don't expect what happened in the previous election to take that shape. The APC will have to shift to make sure it balance the food crop, balance the relationship, and balance the inputs, and balance the pressures that are coming from the southern part of the country, the religious inclination, ethnic alignment, and interest alignment.
Well, let's look at this. I mean, we saw that in 2011, obviously. I mean, ANPP, for instance, Shekarau and Oyegun, and Buhari and Pastor Tunde Bakare. I mean, we had that kind of mix, and the outcome, obviously, was 10 million votes difference between President Goodluck Jonathan and Buhari. Are we likely to see a similar margin, or a shrinkage, or even a reversal?
The chances for reversal is not very clear. But maybe the population might get narrower. Well, you should understand that where the position of APC, you should understand that it has gone through a lot of stages. PDP has been on right from 1998, and it's tends to be getting more grounded and grounded. People who have left other parties have shifted. For instance, look at what has happened to Labour Party, what has happened to APGA. A lot of the big characters there have shifted to PDP. And part of the problem in this country is that people go into parties on what they will get. That is a very dangerous thing. That if they don't get what they want, they shift. That's why I emphasize the issue of interest articulation. Probably what the PDP is going to do and what it does is to articulate interests. When such interests are properly articulated, they can sustain them. But from the look of things, the figure you quoted is likely to be narrower. Narrower in the sense that APC is a bit more organized. But I think the chances of PDP in terms of grounding is much more deeper than APC.
See, Professor Amden, we are seeing already in terms of the emergence and perhaps influence and power of the smaller parties, a political map of the country that you cannot just paint. You say, look, you cannot say these are all umbrella states or these are all broom states to say PDP or APC. In Ogun State, for instance, the SDP is with Segun Oshoba is rearing his head, or has reared his head. APGA, of course, is there in the southeast, and Labour Party in different parts of the country. Again, the question that we have posed in the course of discussing the variants of this subject matter, are we likely ignoring the smaller parties that might spring a surprise in terms of swinging the votes in some of the critical elections next year?
No, one is not going to be surprised.
Yes.
They may have some influence, but my understanding is that a lot of these parties get themselves organized because they want to be recognized and be wooed. My understanding is that the PDP and APC are likely going to woo a lot of these parties, particularly presidential election. Now, you look at the position of APGA, look at the position of Labour.
Yes.
And the other parties too that are waiting. What is going to be on the table that well, we have spent X, we have done this, we have done this. I have this large number of people for the following. What is the stake? What is the promise? It depends on the bargaining, negotiation, dialogue, and consultation. So the purpose, some people organize small parties largely to wait on what they can get. And this is an opportunity, and they are going to manipulate it. And they are going to put it on the table. It depends on the price tag. Whoever gets what, when, and how, get the string. That is my understanding. And they are going to have a lot of influence in upgrading the behavior, the party strength of PDP and APC.
Okay, Professor Sam Amden, I just very quickly, do you think we have enough time for campaigns? Just barely 2 months to voting.
I believe the campaigns have already been done. Because if you watch very clearly, people are aware of where they are going. What the two parties and other parties are going to do is to now come to the drawing table, the last ditch, and become more organic and go over where they have gone to. And I'm sure between now and February, those ones will be nipped up. People have already made their mind. You should understand the political culture of Nigerians. Once an average Nigerian makes his mind, he knows his direction, the change are going to be very, very marginal. So the campaign that will be done is to tidy up, is going to cosmetic and filling up the gaps that have been left.
On that note, I would like to thank Professor Sam Amden, a professor of political science, who's joined us on the conversation this morning. Professor Amden, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
All right, this is Good Morning Nigeria. We're going over now to sports as part of the last segments of today's program. FIFA will vote next week over whether to publicly release a disputed report into alleged corruption in the bidding for the 2018 and 2022 World Cup tournaments. Now, the world's football governing body has not be possible. However, under a proposed amendment to FIFA's Code of Ethics, an edited version of the report could be released. FIFA is due to meet in Marrakesh, Morocco next week, where the vote will take place. We go over now to the sports desk where Musbah Dan Wahab is waiting for this and other stories.
Okay, a bit of sport now, and we begin by looking at those who are in and those who are out of the last 16 in the UEFA Champions League.
96 matches have so far been played in the Champions League group stages, which ended on Wednesday, and the process to separate the boys from the men will continue in the last 16. The deal is now amongst Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester City, Atletico Madrid, Juventus, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Monaco, Bayern Leverkusen, Borussia Dortmund, Bayern Munich, Barcelona, Paris Saint-Germain, Schalke, Porto, and Shakhtar Donetsk. And Liverpool, Olympiacos, Zenit St. Petersburg, Anderlecht, Roma, Ajax, Sporting Lisbon and Atletico Bilbao have now dropped down the ladder to the Europa League's last 32. Funding for up-and-coming British tennis players is to be severely cut in an attempt to develop more players who can survive in the world's top 100. The Lawn Tennis Association, LTA, will phase out existing levels of support over the next year, giving players who lose out significantly a chance to adjust to their new financial means. Funding will only be offered to those competitive with the world's best. Funding for elite players had already been reduced from £12 million to £10 million for 2014 and could only be claimed by players under 24 who agreed to pay back 20% of the prize money they earned. The pace of reform has, however, been sped up dramatically. The LTA is mindful of the need to reduce spending, but is also increasingly of the view that having too much too soon can hinder a player's development. Coaches rather than cash will be the LTA's main currency in future. Russia's athletics chief has quit as treasurer for the International Association of Athletics Federation, IAAF, following doping claims. A German TV program alleged doping in Russian athletics was rife and that Valentin Balakshinev was implicated. The IAAF was unable to confirm reports that marketing consultant Masapa Papadiak, the son of its president Lamin Diak, and legal advisor Habib Sise had also quit pending the outcome of a probe into allegations of a cover-up of systematic doping in Russia. Balachinev told journalists he had stepped down voluntarily from his IAAF role, but added that he planned to return at the end of the investigation into this doping scandal.
About sport this morning, the program continues very shortly. Have a very wonderful sporting weekend.
All right, we're moving on now to the foreign scene, where the United States Congress has imposed sanctions on Venezuelan officials who violate protesters' rights. And also in Hong Kong, the authorities have cleared barricades of the protesters. We now join Oyeyemi Ajayi for these stories and more.
Thank you and welcome to the foreign scene. The United States Congress has passed a bill which would impose sanctions on Venezuelan officials found to have violated protesters' rights. The vote was passed by the House of Representatives and received similar approval by the Senate earlier this week. The bill is now likely to be signed into law by President Barack Obama. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro has described the move as imposing insolent imperialist sanctions. He said the U.S. wanted to challenge Venezuela with sanctions and threats. Relations between Venezuela and the United States have been observed to be tense for years, as these new sanctions are seen to mark a further worsening of such relations between the two countries. The bill targets current and former Venezuelan officials who directed significant acts of violence or serious human rights abuses against persons associated with anti-government protests in Venezuela that began on 4th February. More than 40 people from both sides of the political divide were killed in the protest which took place in Venezuela between February and May. In the Middle East, a suicide bomber has struck an Afghan army bus carrying soldiers at east of the capital, Kabul, killing at least 6 troops. The spokesman for Kabul Provincial Police Chief Ashmat Stanikzai said the bomber was on foot when he attacked the Afghan National Army troops on the highway near Tarak Hill area. The Taliban claimed responsibility for the blast in the message sent to local media by the group's spokesman. The Kabul Crime Branch Unit Chief said as a result of the attack, 6 Afghan chief staff were martyred and 10 others were wounded. The attack is the first in the area of the capital for more than a week and marks the resumption of an intensified anti-government campaign by the fighters. And lastly, Hong Kong authorities have begun clearing barricades at the main protest camp after more than 2 months of pro-democracy demonstrations. The authorities had warned protesters to leave ahead of the operation at Admiralty Camp, but some vowed to stay. The number of protesters has fallen to a few hundred from the tens of thousands who turned out in September. No clashes have been reported, but police say they will start to make arrests if any protester remains. Police officers started to clear the camp and dismantle tents after issuing orders for protesters to vacate the occupied area within 30 minutes or face arrest. And that concludes our package from the foreign scene. Do have a splendid weekend.
That's right. Thank you very much there, Oyeyemi Ajayi, for the foreign news package. Now we'll go over to entertainment. The Nigerian music industry and Nollywood are generating positive global reviews. And this, of course, is on account of a joint collaboration that features veteran actor Peter Edochie and Annie Ebere in Flavor Nabiana's new music video. Abdul Malik Adio has the details.
Hello there. A stylized singer and songwriter Flavor Nabiana drops a new creative video for a song titled Bolibe of his brand new album Thankful, which allegedly sold 1 million copies in 5 days.
Showcasing his ingenuity by playing the lead role of the crown prince in search of a desirable maiden, Flavor Nabiana's Gullible brings to mind a tale of romance, intrigue, and epic love. Flavor's rumored girlfriend, Most Beautiful Girl in Nigeria 2013, Anna Ebere, plays the lead role of Flavor's love interest, who he chooses over a host of celebrated ladies in the village. Directed by Clarence Peters, the video also features a veteran in the Nigerian movie industry, actor Peter Dochi, who plays Flavor's royal father.
Golibe na mama yi musilike Golibe yo 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 masinachi.
Amazing concept right there, and I guess the more reason why the 21-track album must continue to generate positive global reviews. That's it on Arts and Entertainment. Good morning.
That's right, Abdul Malik Adio, thanks a lot, but I would like to apologize for the glitches in the audio of that report. In the meantime, we're going over now to the weather room to check out the prospects for major Nigerian towns and cities for the rest of the day. Okay, and that does it for Good Morning Nigeria for today and also for the week. As I said earlier at the beginning of the program, my colleague Claire was off today. But I'd like to thank all the backroom staff for their assistance and also to you, our viewers, for tuning into the program. The program Good Morning Nigeria returns on Monday at 7 o'clock in the morning. Do have a nice weekend and, of course, a nice day. Kingsley Osadolo here.